let us continue. We took off where we were talking about the movie 2012. That is another way to create a collective simulation where all who looked at it were emotionally and mentally absorbed into how that build up of that momentum of the whole 2012 change within humanity could get an outlet through a movie. The other way around, as they have also attempted many times, is actually to create false memories via movies and make a collective groups within humanity looking at it. Because when we talk about the brain and how the brain perceives reality, then the brain do not make distinctions between what we have observed in a movie and what we are actually experiencing in the world, because it's a kind of internal process. And grown-ups, of course, are aware that this is a movie, and because we have gone into our frontal lobe and we can distinguish between the different levels of reality, but children can't. Or people that have not developed that kind of synaptic pruning in between, this is movie, this is not. We see how movies affect people. They go in and watch something, especially boys. Then they come out, if they see a karate movie or whatever, they come out, then they are the character or the heroes. They enact what they have been watching. Or we saw the whole role play movement that came with Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, and how people are then suddenly enacting what they have seen in a movie, and by that they're actually exemplifying it and making it a kind of collective memory. They are suddenly living that reality, replaying some of the stuff from the Middle Ages, but putting in fairy tales and imaginary things that they have seen in the movies. Or the other very great tool, as we know of, computer games, or people that are now constantly linked up to different types of social media or what have you, and including you guys that are listening to this, and girls, by the way, and all in between. So we are here saying that the way that what the event program literally played into our midst is the ability for us to be conflated with virtual reality and enabling us to literally adapt to virtual reality and different types of programs that will allow them for a larger range of programmability that does not necessarily need enacting. We saw how they could change the entire world the last 5 years just by using social media, which takes us into why some of the larger influencers on, not people, but I'm talking about different programs here without mentioning any names, without mentioning any people, but how certain platforms have been taken over and other platforms have been generated where different types of information can be circulated within different groups of people, again with a big experiment that also went with that group I'm not mentioning the name for, but it has a specific letter, and understanding that that was a program that ran to see how do we get people to respond to computer programs that are AI funded or put on AI kind of technology, which we're also playing with now with the whole rollout of AI, and how people easily responded and used Siri and used all of these things, feeding these machines that are then linked up to the way that our neural network functions, because we are now so linked up to the different types of information systems of the social media, including the expanded speed up of how we perceive information, how quickly we adapt to information. I notice, including you, Josh, when you are on the screen, you're just like that, rolling it. So, and I'm the older generation. I can't information so quickly. And I have noticed that you think you are seeing it, but you're not. But your brain tells you, I can do this. That's another type of programming. So we are all under different types of programming, reprogramming, relooping, mind wiping, mind alteration, genetic modification. All of this is being played out now. And the last 5 years was the big test run. How far can they control this? How far can they push this? And into what version do they want to push it? And one of the big players that were back then in 2017-18 were the Niburians. They have pulled out as well. So some of the main players of the original Arcturian programs have pulled out. And that's why the event program collapsed. because it was built upon some of the ancient Niborian technologies. And the Niborian shifted side are now aligned with the Orions, and they are now running under the military projects and the New Atlantis projects. So hence, the event program never unfolded as it's supposed to. But as always, there are scavengers that are taking over what others have done and what we call re-engineering it into different purposes, including crisscrossing on the sky, including all sorts of things that we are experiencing that were originally part of a different type of modification of the genetic structure, keeping it in what we call astral barrier and mental field, and biocoding in a specific way, keeping our original genetic structure locked into a specific type of DNA, which we now know is becoming fluent and are linking up to the fourth dimension, and by that begin to break down the typical institutions of what we perceive a human to be, which we're seeing with the crystal children as well as the rainbow children, how they are completely changing the institution of what it means to be human.
And lots of social programs, too. There are a ton of social programs that maybe aren't as dramatic as that, but that work on the mind. So much stuff here, too. The big ones I'm set on exploring, perhaps, is choices. And some people say each choice that we make or don't make could go into multiple timelines. Then we get, where do the individual and collective deviate and come together, and how those two come together. I will throw maybe another thing in there too. I was at the ocean this morning, and seeing the waves break, the intensity of the waves, so many different variables in there. How white the foam was, the amount of pockets of air as on each wave as it broke, how far out a wave started, the intensity, where they crossed, how they crossed once they hit, how the ripple effect, the ocean moving out as it's crashing in. It's just boundless. Anyway, so these computers, people understand some of these ideas in computer analogies, but it's fascinating how you say that, that they do this as simulations and things like that. But that would have to be a massive computer that's observing everything all the time with various influences, and it's just mind-blowing. And that's enough for now.
But the whole point is, it's not computers.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's my whole point. That's beyond, things like that are beyond the capability of computers that I'm aware of.
But it's not beyond the understanding of holographic simulations and how these different programs can, because our entire reality is a holographic structure, but it's not hologram as a kind of projection of something else. It's not made by a machine. It's not virtual. It's not computed. It is, again, when we talk about the original density energies and the original energy units that comes from the original worlds that we are part of, we can keep limitations up within different types of cubes in the fourth and fifth dimension. But we're then asking, what are the properties of the fourth dimension? How does that work in reality? We know how the 3 dimensions work, and then we plot in time, as in how quickly the units move within a type of 3-dimensional space. That's quote-unquote time. So that's just the momentum of energy in that space. That's time. But that's not the fourth dimension. That's a feature of the third dimension, or kind of 3-dimensional space. So what is the fourth dimension? Well, first and foremost, it's built upon completely holographic principles. And holographic principles means that the unit contains the entire code of the wholeness it's part of, not some projection of a beam through some kind of technology. And it's tied intrinsically to consciousness. So in the fourth dimension, in the machine worlds, you don't have active changeable consciousness. You have fixed point, locked in, biometrically engineered type of androids that function in a specific way to, what we could say, preserve what's left of the original genetic structure. That's part of the top of the hierarchy. And most of the original civilizations in these worlds are stasis, to preserve the genetics. So they have built the machine worlds to sustain themselves for eternity, so to speak, within the third cycle, previous universal cycle types of energy units that are based upon spatial features. Spatial features are not time space-time as we know of it. It just means different types of orbital or reality fields that can create spheres within spheres, worlds within worlds, realities within realities. But they differ due to the different types of consciousness that's there. So that's the fourth dimension, that machines and technology and beings and life forms and consciousness and energies are flexible and changeable and can change according to the change in consciousness. Hence, if you don't want reality to change, you create cubes and machines and androids that keeps up the configuration.
Yeah, it's just, it's mind-blowing to try to imagine a reality without time and, space. Time, that's no problem for me because that's a kind of a mental construct. But, like, what does a being look like that can't exist in space?
That's a good question. Well, first and foremost, when you are in a reality field, you create an influential sphere around yourself. You are literally a spherical being. So where you have the sphere around you, where you're the nodal point in the middle of that sphere, you have a space. That's the spatial features. Because when we spilled over into this universal structure, we took with us the spatial energy configuration from the previous universal cycles, because space needs to be transformed as well into what we could say a different type of energy configuration that is in affinity with life force, as I talk about in the next universal cycles. And how that operates, I have no idea because I'm not there yet. That's the future. But I do know that spaces came from the previous universal structure, and it's spheres. These spheres can be extended and collapse, as we see it with when we look into the different energy configuration of our universe. It's orbital, and it is within rings, spheres within spheres, fields within fields, layers within layers. So that's the complexity already. So we could say that the reality field configuration came in from the previous universal cycles. We brought it with us with the master builders that had that in place already. And when we came in with our consciousness potentials of these realms that we are now part of, the whole purpose was to change space, to adapt the fixed spaces and the fixed type of technologies into being flexible and changeable according to our consciousness potentials. And why was that important? Because when you had fixed spaces and technologies, you could have wars. We had so many wars, and there were no effect of it, karma, so to speak. There were no repercussions. People could just literally do whatever they wanted, conquer space, take it over as we're seeing it now, colonizing it, and there were no repercussions. But when we talk about the way that we rebuild the universal structures to be part of the next group of civilizations, was that once you understand that your consciousness and your choice affect your reality field, then you have instant karma. You could see it right away. This is how my influential sphere, as a spherical being, that is, the sphere defines my space, my personal space, so to speak, but it also holds my different layers of complex consciousness structures I have chosen to build in different realities. So my worlds that I am part of, as part of the fourth and fifth dimension and sixth, will reflect who I am as a consciousness being. So if I am fully benevolent, I will create benevolent worlds. If I'm fully malevolent, I will create malevolent worlds. We will be the creators of the worlds that we are part of by our influential spheres that will draw in energy units from our surroundings and begin to create that personalized, individualistic type of world. If I then get others to join me in a council, then I have a full reality field.
Mind-blowing. And was thinking earlier about a lot of this stuff administered from the 4D, but then that begs to wonder what trickles down above it and how it works. It's just complicated enough in the 4D. Then who's pulling the strings, or how are the strings pulled above that? And I don't know what's relevant to go into for this conversation, but just to kind of see how vast this thing can go as an example here.
And that's why the different groups that want to remain in previous universal cycles, they have these pillars or towers that are hierarchically built up, where you have these different groups that operate on different fixed types of dimensions that are held in place by different types of cubes that are creating different types of realities that are in a manner that they can control. In the original Pillar project, all of this changed as we grew. Then we would create the next level. It was not there to begin with. It had the potentials for it, the possibilities and probabilities, but we would develop within that realm, that domain. And once we had done that, there we would move into the next, where we would become co-creators with what we already had brought with us, and there see how does this type of consciousness function in this type of energy, in this type of 6th and 7th and 8th dimension of the middle domains. How does our priorly developed 4th, 5th, and 6th type of dimensional awareness compute or work with this other type of dimensions, where it become more and more refined and more subtle. So what we would make of choices would have a larger impact. You see, the more dense the energies are, the less impact our consciousness has on reality. Hence the trickling down to the bio and emotional mental field. But if we go into the original holographic potentials and the refinement of the energies, then literally we can become, as Oppenheimer said, destroyers of worlds just by our who and what we are, hence the segregation dynamics. If you want to play around with that one, you can create your own space and you can demolish your own space. But here in our vicinity here, we don't play that way. So that's part of that one. Anyways, Josh, I think that we have covered so much ground here.
We have. Before, there's only like 3 other things. The gathering of the data on the humans, how they do that, would fascinate me, how on such a large scale.
And that's the quick question. Pull-ins, scanning, cube scanning. They have cubes in the 4th dimension. They are scanning us all the time. They're monitoring us all the time. We are literally under constant monitoring and reading. They know us from A to Z. They can scan our entire energy system, replicate it, put it into simulation programs and run whatever they want with it and alter it wherever they want, put it back into us, and we won't even know the difference. And by that, create the different scenarios that they want.
And you've talked about that. And you also mentioned the true original worlds. I'm sure in a few of your books you've mentioned like painting a picture of what that is actually like beyond the quantum field and the things you've said today. But I don't know if there's anything to refer people to that. And then the biggest thing that I think overall is memory. Okay, that's what this huge part of this is all about. The forgetting, the remembering, how memory itself works in our reality, if it differs in others, or I guess what are the basics that people need to know to regain memories and to vet memories? And what should they remember? Besides
that's the whole academy material there. That's just all of it. But let me just sum it down to a very, very simple thing. Science tells us that our memory is part of a hippocampus area in the middle of our brain. It's connected to the limbic system and it's part of the gray matter that our engineers and codes, quote unquote, different types of memories, selects different type of neural networks that are then monitoring and using, quote unquote, the coding for what is most functional for us to be as human beings. Of course, for me, it's clear memory are what's in the distortion fields. Human memories, as we are now, are part of emotional patterns in your emotional field, the 9 layers of females, 7 layers of males. I talk about this in the reconfiguration science course material. And then we have the 5 mental layers that goes with mental processes. All of that's the human memories. It's not the brain, it's not the neurons, it's not the neural network. The brain is just a computer. It picks in information layers from these subtle energies that are part of our re-engineered lower Holster's vessel that we are part of. So when we talk about the original civilizations and extraterrestrial civilizations, they don't have memories. They have cubes. They have systems they can connect to. They have what we could say expansion of their awareness. If they want to figure out how things work, as I do as well, I expand my awareness into it. I look at it. I focus on it. I get the information from it. I don't need memory. I don't need to recall anything. So when I talk about reconnecting to a holographic energetic structure, and I do use the human word of memory and say I'm recalling past lives, what I'm actually doing is I'm just reading my holographic energetic structure, the code systems that are there. I'm downloading it as a program into my brain, and then my brain interprets it as a memory. But it is a kind of what we could call a holographic energetic code system that I integrate into my human brain, which then computes it into information. And then I can expand it into my influential sphere, see through the different dimensions I have created and engineered there. And then I can roll it out and see, oh, this is how I operate there, like a holographic screen, not memory, but like a full film where I can go into all sorts of details. These are the true memories, quote unquote, my own what we could say incorporated complexity patterns of my prior existences, which are part of coded in my original holographic energetic architecture. Whereas the false memory, if I go into that one, seeing it literally as a movie, and I go in and I try to take a cup, or if that's there, or go into a craft or whatever it is, and I try to do something, then it can't do it. Then it glitches. Whereas if it's my own holographic memory, quote unquote memory or recall or energy pattern that belongs to my original architecture, well, then I become part of it. It completely consumes me with all of my senses, all of my awareness, and I'm back there because time doesn't exist. I am literally traveling or sojourning or remote viewing or remote interacting or re-interacting with my original consciousness potentials and my original what is coded into my holographic architecture. Because the whole point of the energy system, the holographic energetic architecture, is this coding. We are coding in, not a computer program, but we are literally taking all of these little transformational processes and choices and experiences, and they become a pattern. They become a little light filament. They become light code, if you like, that goes in and amplifies a holographic energetic structure, making it more and more complex until all 6 lower dimensions of organic vessel, outer domain, energy systems, middle domain are able to light up to such a degree that we become light orbs in a huge, humongous capacity that goes from more dense core, as in kind of when we talk from this angle, the density will then be according to the type of vessel we choose to have, and then it will become more and more subtle into the outskirts of it. But we can also do the other way around, where the outskirts, as we're having now, the outer rim is dense, and then the core of it is this high vibration that connects to the core domains. And then we can decide, that's the what we can say, the reconfiguration is that then we shed off the dense layers of the outer layers and become our core domain version. And that's why we typically spill over into a new refined type of consciousness and energy that then are fueled with what we understand as life force. Because life force will be built out of the trinity structure or the dual structure of consciousness and energy units that goes into transformational processes in different reality fields. And the whole sole purpose of this is a huge transformation of us, reality, and everything that was prior to all civilizations, so that everybody can do the elevation into the next realms and the next cycles that will be based upon completely new features. Yeah, so that was a bit of a portion there.
Beautiful. I didn't even have to say, and all that with no separation.
Okay. All right. Well, people, thank you for listening in. That's my best take on the Mandala Effect. And I've been sitting on this information for years. And thank you for listening in. And as things and circumstances allow for it, of course, I will share more of what I know and what I have learned over my time here on this planet, and as well as in the other realms. But for now, I think that suffices. And until next time, take care.